Hey, it's Jordan with Status Coup. With 1 week to go until a potentially historic UPS strike featuring 300,000 workers potentially on strike, President Biden and his White House are floating he might get involved. As we know, that worked out really well for the railroad workers at the end of last year, coming from the quote, most pro-labor president of all time. Let's give you the details here. This is from Politico, clearly leaked by the Biden White House. Headline, this is a problem. Biden faces looming strikes that could rock the economy. Within a matter of months or even weeks, Biden could find himself dealing with multiple major worker strikes that threaten to rock the economy ahead of the presidential election. Already one labor group is creating difficulties for Biden. The United Auto Workers, a powerful union with a base in the critical battleground state of Michigan, is withholding support from the president for the time being. Good. UAW's new president, the tough-talking, left-leaning Shawn Fain, has bashed the administration for doling out billions in subsidies for electric vehicles without demanding higher wages and other protections for workers. Current and former Biden aides and allies are miffed and perplexed by the non-endorsement, according to several people familiar with their thinking, and Democrats are bracing for a likely strike when UAW's contract ends in September. I have reached out actually to some UAW contacts, so I'll be on the lookout for an interview with UAW workers soon. The Biden White House is absolutely miffed. How is this group of auto workers that we have screwed for the last 40 years and helped the Republican Party decimate, how are they not endorsing us with a glowing embrace, with open arms a year and a couple months before the election? We're dumbfounded. About time there's some strong, non-corrupt leadership at the top of UAW, because it hasn't always been that way. If you're UAW watching, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Continue. But a potential work stoppage by the Teamsters of UPS, which handles a quarter of the country's parcel shipments, is also looming when their contract ends July 31st. And actors and writers are already striking in Hollywood, which may be the highest profile union battle of all. Taken alone, each standoff presents complications for the White House. Taken together, it is a profoundly difficult test for the president, whether to side with a constituency that's been a bedrock throughout his career or lean on them right as he's set to face off Donald Trump, who's gunning for the UAW's endorsement. Biden has few tools available to fix the problem. Labor leaders and top Democrats are urging Biden to stay out, and Teamsters President Sean O'Brien has repeatedly told the White House to not intervene in union strikes. We recently covered a UAW practice picket in New York where Sean O'Brien spoke. Let's take a listen.
Remember what you sacrificed during the pandemic. Remember what you sacrifice every day when you go to work at this company, when you're working for poverty wages. Some people have to work 2 or 3 jobs. That shouldn't happen when you're working as a Teamster. Full-timers, we need to stick together and fight for these part-timers. We need to make sure that everybody is taken care of in these negotiations and no one gets left behind. But I gotta tell you, UPS is acting real foolish lately. They don't think we're for real. They don't think we have the intestinal fortitude or the balls to take them on. Well, we are gonna shut them down, stop supply chain solution, and show UPS who runs this country. The Teamsters Union runs this company. Thank you.
So powerful words from Sean O'Brien, and Biden's team is now saying we might get involved, trying to keep that possibility open. In interviews with Politico, senior Biden administration officials did not rule out the possibility of the president getting involved, but they also pointed to his pro-labor bona fides to suggest that he likely wouldn't unless both sides asked him to. Quote, I will say it's really important to realize where we've been and what the president continues to say, said Celeste Drake, deputy director of the National Economic Council. He met with young workers on Monday and emphasized with them his support for the right to organize and the right to collectively bargain. And by the way, the right to strike. So his commitment to all of those has been clear. You got to love it from the Biden White House, Politico. It's almost like they're just kind of erasing history. We're not talking like 2-3 years ago. We're talking a few months ago. He blocked a railroad strike. He worked with Republicans to block a strike, yet calls himself the most pro-labor president in history. Those two things are at conflict. Those two things do not align. Complete joke, complete propaganda from Biden as well as his aides in the corporate media. But listen, it's not a coincidence that Biden is floating this a week before the deadline for UPS and the Teamsters, UPS workers, to reach a contract. It's kind of like, try to virtue signal and put out the comfy words. We're with you. We're stepping back. We're going to let you deal with it. We're going to let you guys handle it, but we might get involved. That's what you call talking out of both sides of your mouth. Also sending a message to the Teamsters and UPS workers, as well as UPS, a greedy corporation, that, hey, this is an election year for me. We're not looking for a long drawn out strike here that's going to definitely inconvenience, make uncomfortable our voting base, suburban residents all over the country, upper middle class, resistance wine moms who cannot go without their Amazon Prime package coming within 2 hours, which would be affected and delayed if the Teamsters and UPS go on strike in a week. Let me show you also when Biden's team is floating that, we might get involved. Well, if you look at the polls, I think there's a stronger chance that he might get involved. He's pushing this propaganda and delusional fairy tales about the great economy and Bidenomics is doing wonderful. Well, people don't feel it because it's propaganda and not true. New polls show just 34% approve of his handling of the economy, i.e. Bidenomics. So do you really think if over 300,000 workers go on strike from UPS, grinding mail delivery to a halt, that he's just going to stay out of it because he's pro-labor? Well, all you got to do is, how did he conduct himself and the Democratic Party during the railroad strike, or to cut off the railroad strike? So this is a not so subtle threat leaked through Politico, in my view. Let's take a listen to Morning Joe. Of course, you're going to get very, very thorough, thoughtful coverage from Morning Joe on the issue. Definitely words for, we have to be on the side of the workers. To hell with short-term economic pain. Let's take a listen to how Morning Joe covered it.
President Biden is facing several major worker strikes that could really have a dent in the U.S. economy. As our friends at Politico note, one labor group, the United Auto Workers, is already creating difficulties for Biden by withholding support from the president, at least for the time being. There's also a potential work stoppage involving the Teamsters of UPS, as well as, of course, those ongoing dual strikes out in Hollywood. So far, unions are urging the president not to intervene. But in interviews with Politico, senior Biden administration officials did not rule out the possibility of the president getting involved. And Eugene, the president has, of course, really fashioned himself as the most pro-union, pro-labor chief executive we've maybe ever had, or at least certainly in decades. He's had a few issues before, the railroad workers, let's remember, a few months back. But this does loom as a concern. People you speak to in the White House, how worried are they, and what's the strategy?
Yeah, they're Democrats, so they're always worried about something. They're always worried about something on the horizon. I think with this one, though, they feel like a lot of it is out of their hands for now, and that they're kind of the watchers in this case, right? They're waiting for both sides to say, hey, Biden, we want you to come in. I think that is where they see him as being involved instead of, the rail worker strike, when that happened, that was, they say, because of the economy, the huge impacts of the economy. And UPS, a fourth of the parcels that go around this country come from UPS. So that would be a huge issue for President Biden. And the Americans, when they can't get their stuff, that's when they get really pissed off. So this White House is watching and kind of waiting to see how these things shake out. And as you know, when we get in that press briefing room and talk to Karine Jean-Pierre, they don't like to comment on individual strikes. They try to stay out of that as long as they possibly can. So we're probably not going to hear much from them, but they are working behind the scenes to hope that this kind of figures itself out before they have to get involved.
This comes, of course, as the labor secretary is only in an acting role, Julie Su. Jim, what would be, if you were still in that White House right now with these union trouble, and particularly one who for a president who identifies so closely with them, what would be your strategy?
I do exactly what they're doing, but Eugene has it exactly right. The one they're going to worry about is UPS. You start taking away people's Amazon Prime packages, and we got ourselves a political problem. So they're going to sit back and do all the quiet work. I'm sure Steve Ricchetti, the president's senior advisor, who's very close to labor, is shuttling back and forth between folks saying, when you need us, we are here. President Biden is the closest leader we've ever had to labor. He's going to be on the phone all the time. But now's not the time for White House intervention. You wait until you can bring everyone together, put them in the famous Roosevelt room and say, okay, let's fix this.
A lot of interesting words there. A lot of interesting words there. Notice they didn't whatsoever talk about the plight of the workers, the fact that workers are dying in un-air conditioning trucks during record heat waves because of the climate inferno, that workers are being screwed, particularly the part-time workers, that workers are being harassed by managers, verbally, sexually, etc. No mention of any of that. We're not surprised. But a lot of interesting things. First of all, when the former Obama campaign manager, Jim Messina, says, don't get involved until they ask you to, well, they've asked you not to. He kind of sort of mentioned that, but they've already asked you not to. Teamsters President Sean O'Brien said, do not get involved. Teamsters president says he's asked the White House not to intervene if UPS workers go on strike. So why is it even up for debate that the White House would get involved? He's already said, mind your own business, because he saw what this most pro-labor president did to the railroad workers a couple months ago. So I don't really understand why they're watching and waiting and on the ready to get involved. You've already been told, stay out of it. Also found it interesting, out of their hands for now. Well, what does that mean? If you are a pro-labor president who believes in the right to strike and organize and is with labor, it shouldn't be in your hands whatsoever. I mean, you could make statements calling for UPS to offer a fair contract, stronger benefits, an even system for full-time and part-time workers. But other than that, what do you mean out of your hands for now? And these are all people, Morning Joe, it's one incestuous cesspool. They're connected to the Biden White House, either working for the Biden White House or in communication with the Biden White House. So their messaging on Morning Joe is coming from the Biden White House. All of these things sound very vague, non-committal. The Biden White House might get involved, out of their hands for now. When he mentions a fourth of the parcels come from UPS, we can't have people getting pissed off if their yoga mats aren't coming in 2 hours with Amazon Prime. And when they say working, but they're working behind the scenes right now. But what does that mean exactly? They're working behind the scenes with hopes that it will work itself out before they have to get involved. What happened to a free market? I thought a free market, government hands off. Let the market decide. If the workers have enough leverage, if the workers are willing to go on strike, if this is really a pro-labor president, let the workers handle it themselves and let UPS decide if they want to lose a lot of money. Of course, they'll try to employ scabs to fill in for the striking workers, but not easy to get, hundreds of thousands of scabs to fill in for potentially striking UPS workers. All of this, to me, is a signal that Biden is going to get involved. Maybe not right away. Maybe if there is a strike, he would let it play out for a week. But if there's not momentum till a deal, that strike is going to affect his poll numbers even more. Reminder, right now, despite all the fairy dust and media propaganda about Bidenomics saving us all, well, Bidenomics right now, he's at a 34% approval rating on the economy. And I repeat, a 34% approval rating on the economy. So he can say whatever he wants, but if you're already in the toilet in your handling of the economy, which other than rare exceptions, presidential elections in large part come down to the economy, and then you have a massive UPS strike that is going to affect everybody, including independents, I find it very hard to believe that Biden will actually stay out. We will see what progressives do. I'm talking to you, Bernie. I'm talking to you, the squad, if you're still awake and consider yourself progressive, to make sure Biden stays out or to go at him if he tries to interfere again. Because make no mistake, if there is a long-lasting strike that harms the economy, and it will, Biden's focus will not be on making sure that these workers have a right to continue to strike. It will be ending the strike, even if it means at harm to the UPS workers. We'll see what happens. To be clear, if there is a massive UPS strike, Status Coup will be out there on the ground, covering it in the trenches. If you're not yet a Status Coup member, sign up today, statuscoup.com/join. $5 to $10 a month helps us do this on the ground reporting. We would love to be out there wherever the biggest strikes are across the country for UPS as well if there is a UAW strike.